Welcome to Tyrian Characterology, the show where we dig up the lore and backstories from prominent characters in the world of Tyrion. Halloween and all its spooks are just around the corner, so this episode is dedicated to the King of Halloween, the master of jokes himself, the Mad King Thorn, also known as Oswald Thorn. So let's get started. The story of Oswald Thorn begins as a young man. Prince Oswald was a mischievous prankster and troublemaker and was thus responsible for numerous deaths, one of which was Serene, a young Crichton noble girl and friend of Prince Oswald Thorn and his brother Prince Evan Thorn. She had a crush on Evan, but was unfortunately killed when Oswald fed hot peppers to a horse, causing it to go mad with pain and trample her to death. Her ghost's last memory is Oswald smiling as she died. Another victim of the young prince was his childhood friend, Samson. He and Oswald had been playing one day when the giant worm grabbed Samson. Oswald didn't draw his sword. Instead, he just ran, abandoning his friend to die. As a second son to the crown, Prince Oswald was not expected to ascend to the throne. Instead, Prince Evan Thorn, the elder brother, was to take the seat one day. He was kind and popular and refused to believe the terrible things others said about his brother Oswald. He truly cared for his younger brother. Beside Evan stood Lady Lyrica. She was in love with Prince Evan. However, Evan's gullibility proved to be his undoing, and Lyrica's hopes for a future with the prince were dashed when young Oswald tricked Evan into being devoured by a giant spider in order to take his place as heir to the throne. Oswald knew Lyrica had loved Evan, and because of this, he wanted her for his own. He won her over with lies and false promises, but once they were married, he dropped the farce and she saw him for what he truly was. And so, he had her assassinated by brigands. All that stood in Oswald's way now was his father, whom he also murdered in cold blood and blamed it on Lord Humphrey Farren. The nobleman, now accused of murder, was sentenced to beheading. Thus began the reign of King Thorn. His reign was nasty, brutish, and short. During this, famine and drought struck Crida, and the high taxes drove peasants to theft and others to starvation. King Thorn rounded up all citizens who were simply suspected of theft and cut off their hands. His so-called justice was swift. King Thorn had numerous wives, many of which there exists no records of. In search of partnership, he kidnapped the father of the Istani princess, Sola, and ransomed him for her hand in marriage. She became his fifth wife, and is said to have been his favorite, though he still had her executed when he grew tired of her, which obviously sparked a war with Istan, in which Crida was ultimately victorious. In total, King Thorn had 8 wives. The other known wives include Estrella, who was killed by Oswald when he put her in a coffin full of rats and dumped it into the sea, and Henrietta, who was killed by the king's heir, Prince Edric. There was also Edric's mother, whose name is still unknown, who was beheaded on his birthday. Oswald saw his son as a disappointment, and as you say, the apple rarely falls far from the tree, and so of course Edric attempted to dethrone his father as an angry mob of Crichtons were lighting bonfires outside of Castle Thorn. Edric's coup failed as the king lured his son into the basement where he stuffed his son's mouth with candy corn and had him locked in the Shell of Insanity, also known as the Reliquary. King Thorn's tyranny came to an abrupt end in approximately 825 AE, when the angry mob stormed Castle Thorn, ending his earthly rule. The rebels intended to kill his 8th wife and son as well during the assault, ending the Thorn dynasty, and implore his cousin to take the throne and plead forgiveness. Word that the deceased king would try to return using his magic, the rebels cut off his body with a carving knife, and hid the body parts in boxes and buried them in scattered locations across Tyria, obscuring their locations with magical seals. Although unable to return to Tyria due to the seals, the Mad King rose to notoriety within the underworld, coming to rule a sub-realm of his own, known as the Mad Realm. Forever he seemed doomed to reign in the underworld, though every year during Halloween, the seals that hold the Mad King are weakened, and his lunatic court attempts to free the Mad King Thorn and unleash him onto the world. So far, only one seal has been broken, but once again, Halloween is approaching. The Mad King was, and is still indeed very mad. Let's hope we can keep him locked away in his mad realm forever and just stick to him occasionally destroying stuff in the mortal realm. Halloween and the Mad King aside, this episode will be the last episode in this season of Tyrian Characterology. It's incredible for me to think back on these 12 Characterology episodes that have spanned over 6 months. I've really enjoyed it, and so of course I'll be back with more episodes in the future. But for now, thank you all for supporting the show, and thank you all for watching. Until next time, I will see you in the mists.
The other night, a Char warrior told me everything he knew. It took about 10 seconds. Oh, it's funny because it's true.